The city never slept. Even after midnight, it glittered like a crown of gold, towering buildings wrapped in glass, streets humming with luxury cars, restaurants glowing with chandeliers brighter than most homes ever saw. At the center of it all stood the Aurelian, a 7-star hotel reserved for the powerful, the wealthy, and the unreachable. Inside, a private dining room slowly emptied. Crystal glasses sat half full. Plates of untouched steak, imported cheese, artisan bread, and exotic desserts lay abandoned, victims of boredom, not hunger. The meeting was over, and so was the food's purpose. At the head of the table stood Adrian Vale, one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Tailored suit, platinum watch, expression carved from stone. He glanced at the table for a moment, not with desire, not with regret, but with indifference. To Adrian, abundance was normal. Waste was invisible. He turned and walked out. Outside, the cold night air brushed against his face as his driver hurried forward. "Car's ready, sir," the driver said respectfully. Adrian nodded and took a step toward the vehicle, then stopped. Something had caught his eye. Across the street, near a dimly lit alley, sat a woman. She was wrapped in a faded shawl, thin enough to be useless against the cold. In her arms was a small child, no older than 4. The child's head rested weakly against her chest, eyes half closed, lips dry and pale. She wasn't shouting, she wasn't begging, she wasn't even looking at people anymore. She was staring at the ground. That kind of silence unsettled Adrian more than desperation ever could. For a brief moment, he considered getting into the car. Not my problem, his mind whispered. He had charities, donations, advisors who handled those things. Still, his feet didn't move. Adrian turned slightly and looked back through the hotel doors. The leftover food, perfectly edible, perfectly untouched. Something stirred, an old memory he hadn't visited in years. A younger version of himself. A cold apartment, an empty fridge. He shook his head, annoyed. "Get the food packed," he said abruptly. The driver blinked in surprise but obeyed. Minutes later, Adrian stood on the sidewalk holding a warm box of food that cost more than most people earned in a week. He approached the woman slowly, unsure why his heart was beating faster. When his shadow fell over her, she looked up, startled. Fear flickered in her eyes. "I'm not asking for money," she said quickly, her voice weak but proud. "I just need a little time." Adrian swallowed. "I know," he replied quietly. He knelt down, placing the box in front of her. "This is food," he said. "It's still warm." The woman stared at the box as if it were unreal. Then she opened it. The smell hit her first. Her hands began to shake. She looked at her child, then back at Adrian, and tears streamed down her face. "My son hasn't eaten since yesterday," she whispered. "I gave him water so he wouldn't cry." Her voice broke. "You don't understand," she continued, clutching the box. This is everything right now." Adrian felt a tightness in his chest he couldn't explain. "It's just leftovers," he said softly, almost dismissively. "Eat." She closed her eyes. Tears fell onto the food. She pressed her forehead to the ground. "May God bless you," she sobbed. "May He return this kindness to you 1,000 times over." Adrian stood quickly, uncomfortable. "No need," he muttered. "Take care of your child." He turned away before she could say anything else. As the car pulled away, Adrian glanced once more through the window. The woman was feeding her child slowly, carefully, as if afraid the moment might vanish. The child's eyes opened wider. For the first time that night, he smiled. Adrian looked away. It was nothing, he told himself. A box of food, forgotten in an expensive room. But behind him, under a flickering streetlight, the woman whispered a prayer that would not be ignored. "God," she said softly, "I don't know who that man is. But please, watch over him. When his time of need comes, remember this moment." The city lights blurred as the car sped forward. Adrian Vale didn't know it yet. But the meal that meant nothing had already begun to change everything. Chapter 2. Fate does not knock loudly. It doesn't crash through doors or announce itself with thunder. Sometimes, it waits. Sometimes, it whispers. And sometimes, it takes everything away first. 3 days after that night, Adrian Vale sat alone in his penthouse office, staring at a screen that refused to lie. Red numbers, falling graphs, words that felt unreal, account frozen, investment terminated, emergency board meeting required. He blinked once, then again. This isn't possible, he muttered. Adrian had built his empire on precision. Every move calculated, every risk hedged. He didn't gamble, he engineered outcomes. Yet here it was. A deal worth billions had collapsed overnight. His phone rang, then rang again, and again. He ignored it. For the first time in years, Adrian felt something unfamiliar tightening his chest. Fear. By evening, the truth surfaced like poison. His most trusted partner, Marcus Hale, had disappeared. Offshore accounts drained, documents forged, Adrian's signature everywhere. It was a perfect betrayal. By morning, the media had a story. By afternoon, they had a villain. And by night, Adrian Vale, once untouchable, was bleeding. "Sir, the lawyers are here," his assistant said carefully. "How many?" Adrian asked. "All of them." Adrian laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "Send them in." Hours blurred together. Accusations. Damage control. Legal jargon sharp as knives. "Your reputation won't survive this," one lawyer said bluntly. "Your assets may not either," another added. Adrian nodded mechanically. When the room finally emptied, silence rushed in. Heavy, suffocating. He loosened his tie, his hands trembling slightly. 3 days, he thought. 3 days ago, my biggest concern was a delayed flight. His reflection stared back at him from the dark glass window. For the first time, the man looking back looked small. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. The penthouse felt colder than ever, too large, too quiet. Every sound echoed, every thought screamed. He poured himself a drink. Then another. It didn't help. His chest burned. His heart raced like it was trying to escape. He remembered the woman's voice. "May God reward you," he scoffed bitterly. "Reward," he whispered into the darkness. "This is reward." The next morning brought worse news. Banks demanded meetings. Sponsors pulled out. Friends stopped answering calls. Adrian Vale was still rich, but the foundation beneath him was cracking fast. Then his body joined the rebellion. Dizziness, shortness of breath, sharp pain spreading through his arm. He collapsed in the hallway of his own mansion. The last thing he heard before darkness swallowed him was the echo of his own breath, ragged and terrified. When Adrian opened his eyes, the ceiling above him was unfamiliar. Not marble, not glass, just plain white. The air smelled like disinfectant, not luxury. He tried to sit up. Pain shot through him. "Easy," a calm voice said. "You're safe." Adrian turned his head, and froze. It was her, the woman from the street. Clean clothes, hair tied back, a badge clipped to her chest. Head nurse, Amina Rahman. For a moment, Adrian thought he was hallucinating. "You," he whispered. She smiled gently. "Yes," she said. "We've met before." Confusion flooded his face. This hospital, free community clinic," she replied. "You were brought in, with acute stress-induced cardiac symptoms. Another few hours, and," she paused. "You were lucky." Lucky. The word felt foreign. Adrian swallowed hard. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "That night, you were starving." She nodded. "I was," she said simply. "But before that, I was a nurse. A good one. Then my husband died. Medical bills took everything. I lost my job, my home." She met his eyes. "But I didn't lose my faith." Adrian looked away, shame creeping into his chest. "I gave you leftovers," he said. "I barely thought about it." Amina shook her head. "You didn't give leftovers," she said firmly. "You gave dignity. You looked at me like I mattered." She leaned closer. "That night, I prayed for you." Adrian's voice trembled. "I think your prayer worked, in a strange way." She smiled sadly. "Sometimes," she said, "God doesn't change our situation. He changes us through it." Days passed. Adrian stayed in the clinic longer than required. Not because of his heart, but because he didn't want to return to the silence of his mansion. He watched Amina work. She treated the poor with patience, the angry with kindness, the hopeless with quiet strength. One evening, Adrian asked, "Why help me, after everything I'm losing?" She replied, "Because once, you helped me when I had nothing. Now it's my turn." The words shattered something inside him. From that bed, Adrian made decisions that shocked everyone. He cooperated fully with investigators, returned what he could, accepted losses without fighting dirty. He closed businesses built on exploitation, funded legal aid for victims of corporate fraud. The media was confused, the world was skeptical, but Adrian felt lighter with every step. Months later, Adrian Vale stood outside a newly built center. The Second Table Foundation, a place where no food was wasted, where no mother was invisible, where dignity was served first. At the opening ceremony, Adrian spoke briefly. "I once thought a single meal meant nothing," he said. "I was wrong." He looked into the crowd. Amina stood there with her child, healthy, smiling. "That meal saved more than a life," Adrian continued. "It saved my soul." Fate had knocked back. And this time, Adrian Vale opened the door. Final message. Sometimes, the smallest kindness returns. Not as comfort, but as transformation.